The highway stretched dark and empty, a ribbon of asphalt disappearing into the kind of cold that burns, the kind that settles into your lungs and doesn't let go. It was the third night of the cold snap, temperatures dropping so low. The radio had been warning people to stay inside, to check on neighbors, to bring in anything that couldn't survive the freeze. The man had worked late again, later than he should have, and now all he wanted was the warmth of home. His headlights cut through the falling snow, each flake catching the light like static on a dead channel. That's when he saw it. A small shape, motionless beneath the street lamp at the edge of the road. At first he thought it was a discarded bag, maybe a piece of trash blown in by the wind, but something in the way it lay there, something about the stillness, made him slow the truck. He pulled over, engine idling, breath fogging the windshield. He stepped out into the wind, and the cold hit him like a wall. The shape didn't move. He walked closer, boots crunching through frozen snow, and crouched down. It was small, too small, fur matted with ice, body curled tight against itself. A kitten, he thought at first, someone's lost pet, abandoned or separated from its mother. But as he reached out, his hand hovering just above it, he saw the markings, the tufted ears, the faint spots along the legs, the broad, angular face. Not a kitten, a bobcat. His breath caught. The animal was barely breathing, chest rising and falling in shallow, fragile rhythms. Its eyes were closed, paws tucked beneath its body, as if it had simply laid down to sleep and never woken. He didn't think. He pulled off his coat, wrapped the kitten inside, and held it against his chest. The cold bit into his shoulders, but he didn't feel it. All he felt was the faint warmth still clinging to the small body in his arms, and the terrible fear that it wouldn't last. He drove home faster than he should have, one hand on the wheel, the other cradling the bundle against him. The snow came down harder now, thick and blinding, but he didn't slow. When he pulled into the driveway, he was already moving, out of the truck, up the steps, through the door, his mind racing through everything he knew about hypothermia, about shock, about saving something that was already halfway gone. Inside, the house was warm, too warm maybe, but he didn't care. He laid the bobcat on the floor near the heating vent, unwrapping it carefully, hands shaking as he checked for injuries. No blood, no broken bones, just cold, so cold, the fur felt brittle beneath his fingers, the skin beneath it, like ice. He grabbed towels from the bathroom, heating pads from the closet, anything that could hold warmth. He wrapped the kitten slowly, layer by layer, working heat back into its body, the way you thaw frozen ground, gently, patiently, afraid that moving too fast might shatter something fragile. The hours blurred together. He sat on the floor watching the rise and fall of the kitten's chest, adjusting towels, checking temperature, whispering things he didn't remember saying. Midnight passed. Then one, then two. His back ached, his eyes burned, but the kitten's breathing was stronger now, steadier, and when its paw twitched once, just once, he felt something loosen in his chest. He told himself it was just for the night, just until morning, when he could call a wildlife center, someone trained for this, someone who knew what they were doing. He was just buying time, that's all. Then he heard the soft padding of footsteps behind him. Milo appeared in the doorway, a grey tabby with amber eyes, and a tendency to judge the world from a distance. He'd had Milo for 6 years, and in all that time, the cat had never been curious about much beyond his food bowl and the warmest spot on the couch. But now, Milo was moving forward, ears up, eyes fixed on the bundle of towels. The man held his breath. Milo approached slowly, cautiously, nose twitching as he took in the scent. The bobcat kitten stirred slightly, a faint moan escaping its throat, weak, plaintive, barely audible. Milo froze. For a moment, the man thought he might bolt, the way cats do when faced with something they don't understand. But Milo didn't run. Instead he stepped closer, and then with a gentleness the man had never seen in him, Milo lowered his head and began grooming the bobcat's frozen ears. Slow, deliberate licks, tongue working over the icy fur, warming it with each pass. The bobcat didn't pull away. It leaned into the touch, instinct recognizing comfort, even in unconsciousness. The man sat there, motionless, watching something he couldn't explain. A house cat, a creature bred for thousands of years to live safely inside walls, tending to a wild predator that should have triggered every alarm in its body. No hissing, no fear, just care. He didn't move them, didn't interfere. He only watched as Milo settled beside the bobcat, curling his body around the smaller animal, sharing warmth the way a mother would. The bobcat's breathing deepened, its paws relaxed, and for the first time that night, the man let himself believe it might survive. He leaned back against the wall, exhaustion finally catching up to him, but he didn't close his eyes. He stayed there, watching the two of them, one wild, one tame, pressed together in the soft glow of the heating vent. Outside, the wind howled, the snow piled higher, but inside, something fragile and unexpected had taken root. He had planned for one night, but as Milo's purr rumbled softly through the silence, the man realized that some rescues don't end when the sun comes up. They're only just beginning. Morning light crept through the curtains, pale and hesitant, but the man had already been awake for hours. He hadn't moved from his spot on the floor, afraid that if he did, the fragile peace he'd witnessed might shatter. But when he finally stood, knees stiff and back aching, he saw something that stopped him cold. Milo was still there, still curled around the bobcat, body wrapped protectively around the smaller animal. But the bobcat was different now. Its chest rose and fell with steady, determined breaths. Its paws twitched, not from cold, but from dreams. And as the man watched, one tiny paw stretched out, pressing against Milo's side, as if anchoring itself to something solid. The man exhaled. He reached for his phone to call the wildlife center, then hesitated. Just a few more hours, he told himself, just to make sure it's strong enough. Those hours turned into days. The bobcat recovered quickly, faster than he'd expected. By the second day, it was sitting up, golden eyes tracking movement across the room. By the third, it was attempting to walk, legs wobbling, but determined. And through it all, Milo never left its side. The man watched in quiet amazement, as Milo transformed into something he'd never been before, a caretaker. When the bobcat cried, a high, keening sound that echoed through the house, Milo would appear instantly, meowing in response, pressing his forehead against the kitten's until it quieted. When the bobcat finally began eating solid food, Milo sat beside it, as if teaching by example, and when exhaustion took over, Milo curled around the wild kitten, purring until it fell asleep. The man tried separating them once, lifting the bobcat into a crate for what he told himself was safety. Milo had paced the hallway for 20 minutes, crying in a way the man had never heard before, urgent, insistent, heartbroken. When he finally opened the crate, Milo had rushed in immediately, inspecting every inch of the bobcat, as if checking for injury. The man didn't try again. Days turned into a week, and the bobcat's wild nature began to surface. It pounced on shadows with startling precision. It climbed curtains with claws that left marks in the fabric. It studied the world with an intensity no house cat possessed. Yet it also learned from Milo the slow blink of trust, the gentle head bump of affection, the careful play that stopped just short of harm. And every evening, without fail, the two of them curled together on the couch, Milo grooming the bobcat's ears, the way he had that first night. The man stopped checking his phone for wildlife center numbers. He told himself it was temporary, that he was just making sure the bobcat was ready. But as he watched them together, one wild, one tame, both choosing each other, he knew the truth. This wasn't temporary anymore. Something beautiful and impossible was unfolding in his home, and he had no idea how it would end. The change came gradually, then all at once. One morning, the man noticed the bobcat's paws had grown too large for its body, broad and heavy, built for something bigger than the living room floor. Its legs lengthened, its movements sharpened. When it played with Milo now, there was a power behind each pounce that hadn't been there before. Milo didn't seem to notice, or maybe he simply didn't care. He still groomed the bobcat's ears, still curled beside it at night, still trusted it completely. But the man saw what Milo couldn't. This wasn't a kitten anymore. He made the call he'd been avoiding. The wildlife rehab center was calm, professional, understanding. They told him the bobcat was healthy enough now, strong.
How do you explain to a cat that the thing he loves has to leave? He built an enclosure in the yard, large, open, designed to let the bobcat practice being wild again. The first time he brought the bobcat outside, it froze at the threshold, nose twitching at the unfamiliar rush of wind and earth and distance. Then it stepped forward, cautious but curious, and the man watched as instinct took over. The bobcat stalked insects through the grass, with a focus that was purely predator. It climbed the platforms he'd built, muscles rippling beneath spotted fur. It scanned the tree line with ears swiveling, listening to sounds the man couldn't hear. Out here in the open air, the bobcat was something else entirely, something that belonged to the forest, not the living room. But every evening, without fail, it returned to the glass door and pressed its face against it, golden eyes searching for Milo. And Milo was always there, on the other side, paw raised to match the bobcat's through the glass. The man stood between them, heart heavy with a question that had no good answer. Returning the bobcat to the wild was the right thing, the responsible thing. It was what nature intended. But watching Milo cry softly at the door each night, watching the bobcat wait for him, the man wondered if doing the right thing and doing the kind thing were the same. Spring was coming, the rehab center was ready, the forest was waiting. But the bond between them, forged in cold and survival, and something neither species should have understood, was stronger than ever. And the man realized, standing there in the fading light, that sometimes the hardest part of love is knowing when to let it go. Spring arrived gently, the way it does after a hard winter, thawing the ground, coaxing green from the earth, filling the air with birdsong. The bobcat was ready. The man knew it. The rehab staff knew it. Even Milo seemed to sense it, growing quieter in the days leading up to the release, as if preparing for something he couldn't name. The morning came too quickly. The man walked the enclosure one last time with Milo trailing behind. The bobcat approached them both, pressing its broad head against the man's hand, then lowering to nuzzle Milo's face. Milo purred, soft, steady, unafraid. They touched noses, a slow, deliberate contact that felt like understanding. Then the wildlife staff opened the far gate, and the bobcat turned toward the forest. It didn't look back. The house felt wrong without him. Too quiet, too still. Milo wandered from room to room, crying in a way that made the man's chest ache. He checked the enclosure. He searched the yard. He stood at the glass door, waiting for something that didn't come. Days passed, then weeks. The man told himself it was the right choice, that the bobcat was where it belonged. But doubt crept in during the long evenings, when Milo sat at the window and stared into the darkening trees. Then one morning, the man checked the trail camera he'd set up at the edge of the property. His breath caught. There, clear as daylight, stood the bobcat, bigger now, muscles defined beneath sleek fur, eyes sharp and alive. A wild thing, fully realized. But it wasn't moving deeper into the forest. It was watching the house. And in the audio playback, beneath the rustle of leaves and distant bird calls, the man heard something that made his hands shake. 2 soft meows, recorded just after Milo's cries from the porch. A response. That evening, the man opened the back door. Milo stepped out onto the porch, ears forward, body tense with hope. And from the tree line, the bobcat emerged. Not all the way, but close enough. Close enough for Milo to walk to the edge of the yard. Close enough for them to touch noses. One more time. A brief and tender reunion that felt like forgiveness. Then the bobcat turned and slipped.